The mid-boss. Nothing like throwing your game, going for mid-boss, and getting it stolen. Or, better yet, you're not able to end the game because you're not doing mid-boss. Today we're going to talk about mid-boss, a bunch of different scenarios, when you should do mid-boss, when you shouldn't do mid-boss, and also what you need to be careful of. So we're going to start by explaining what is mid-boss. So what do you get from killing mid-boss? Then we'll move on to the meta around mid-boss. So when should you do mid-boss? When should you not do mid-boss? Which characters are good at stealing it, etc. And then we'll show a couple of practical examples taken from some of my games so you guys can see what it looks like in practice. Let's get into it. First of all, let's talk about the Rejuvenator buff. So when you kill mid-boss, there's the Rejuvenator that drops. I'll kill it right here so you can see what it looks like. So the Rejuvenator falls from the sky, and the only way to claim it is through a heavy melee. Meaning you have to charge melee. If you do light melees, it doesn't claim it. As you can see, if I heavy melee, bam, there you go, it claims it. So what does the Rejuvenator buff actually give you? The second thing that the Rejuvenator buff gives you is it gives you what I like to call mega creeps. There's a lot of names for them, but these are the big troopers. They're significantly stronger than the regular troopers. As you can see, they're destroying them. And they will naturally push every single lane. So basically, if you do not touch your waves, these troopers are strong enough to push the lanes on their own. And the third and final thing that Rejuvenator buff gives you is it actually gives you half respawn timer. So when you die, instead of having your full respawn timer, let's say that your regular respawn timer is 50 seconds, instead your respawn timer will be 25 seconds. This buff lasts for 3 minutes. Do note that when all players, let's say all players die, they all lose the Rejuvenator buff. So if you die once, you lose the respawn timer buff and the rejuve buff in general. However, the mega creeps, the troopers, those will stay for 3 minutes regardless of how many players have died or not. Now let's talk about when you should take mid-boss versus when you shouldn't. So I'll start with some obvious scenarios. So usually you want to take mid-boss as soon as you can do it and as soon as you have an opportunity. So there's two factors. Factor number one is, do we have enough damage to kill mid-boss? At the moment, having enough damage to kill mid-boss is very easy because mid-boss takes a lot of damage from melee attacks. I don't really know why this is the case, but mid-boss seems to take extra damage from melee attacks, meaning that you can kill it as soon as it spawns if you have 5 people meleeing it. So you don't need any specific items. As long as you have 5 people at 10 minutes meleeing it, you can kill it fairly quickly. So the first factor is not really taken into consideration. It's more, do you have enough people to kill it? If you only have 2 people, then you'll need to have heroes that are good at killing it. If you have more than 2 people, then it doesn't really matter. If you have 3 to 4 people, as long as you have some damage, you'll probably be able to kill it. So the more important thing is, do you have the opportunity to do it? Because the enemy team will contest you, and mid-boss does have an alert when it goes to half health. So when it goes to half health, it'll emit some sort of horn sound, which will alert the enemies that you're doing it. So they'll know and they'll try to come contest it. So this opportunity can be a couple things. It can be either you've killed all of them. If you've killed all of them, then usually mid-boss is an obvious play. And then the other option is you've killed some of them and you feel that it's good enough. So usually if you have either killed all of them or killed at least 2 of them, it is worth looking at whether you can do mid-boss or not. Now, how do you determine whether you can do mid-boss or not? Let me go to the hero screen so it's a little bit easier to visualize. Even if you have some kills, there are certain heroes that are much better at contesting mid-boss than others. This is not going to be an exhaustive list, but I'll talk rapidly over each hero and tell you guys why they're good at mid-boss or why they're not good at it. Starting off with Abrams. Abrams' ultimate is extremely strong for contesting mid-boss because you can just sit in the air, wait until the Rejuvenator drops, and then use your ult to stun everyone and steal the Rejuvenator. This is one of the most iconic Rejuvenator stealing ultimates in the game. Bebop is somewhat okay for it because he has Uppercut, which can be used to punch people away from the Rejuve. So if you use Uppercut and then you get them away from the Rejuvenator, then you can steal it with your melee. This is a combo that has been done in the past. It's okay, but it's not like super scary. You can usually deal with it. Dynamo is another one that's fairly scary because he can use the singularity to pull everyone towards him and make it so that they can't hit the Rejuvenator and one of his teammates can come in and steal it. So Dynamo can't steal the Rejuvenator by himself, but with a teammate, he can just black hole on top of it and have a teammate steal it. Grey Talon's Bird is okay because it offers an AoE stun, but the stun is very short and therefore it's not that great at stealing. Haze ult is very strong in the Rejuvenator because it's a very cramped area and it's very easy for Haze's ult to hit everyone in that area and force them off of it, making it easier for a teammate to steal it. Infernus ult is one of the best ults for the Rejuvenator as it stuns everyone in an AoE. If Infernus times this properly, he can go for the Rejuvenator, pop his ultimate, and stun anyone who tries to steal it. This is good both defensively and offensively, meaning that if you're an Infernus and you just killed mid-boss, you probably want to consider ulting to secure it. Ivy has Stone Form, which is pretty good at stealing the Rejuve. You can Stone Form from above and use the Stone Form to drop down, stun everyone around the Rejuvenator, and then secure it. Calvin doesn't really have too much use around the Rejuvenator. Do keep in mind that his Frozen Shelter makes it so you can't capture. So before you could Frozen Shelter it and then capture it. Now if you use Frozen Shelter, you can no longer capture the Rejuve, so he needs to drop it so you can punch it. Lady Gas doesn't have any particular interactions with mid-boss. Lash's ultimate is pretty good at mid-boss, however it's not the greatest, but it can be used to throw people off of the mid-boss and then steal it. McGinnis Wall is super obnoxious because it has a stun if you put points into it, and it can also split up the mid-boss area, meaning that you can wall the enemy team off of the Rejuvenator and then steal it from them, as well as stunning them at the same time. Modern Curl Grab is good more defensively in the mid-boss area for preventing enemy steals rather than trying to steal it yourself. Similarly, Paradox Swap is pretty good at preventing steals. If you see someone going for a steal, you can simply swap them away and guaranteeing that they don't get the steal. Pocket Affliction is very good in the mid-boss, but it's not that helpful at stealing it. It's more helpful at contesting it and doing damage. So usually as Pocket, you want to go in before they finish the mid-boss so that you can damage all of them, making it harder for them to do the mid-boss. The current support 7 stun is really strong in the mid-boss area. If you can get your double stun off with Echo Shard, it's a guaranteed steal. Shiv doesn't have any particularly good mid-boss stealing abilities, and neither does Vindicta. Viscous, as you'll see in an example later, has the punch as well as the ball form, both of which are pretty good at dealing with the Rejuvenator, stunning people, moving people away, and just a very good hero to steal the mid-boss with. Warden does not have any special interaction. His ult is good, but doesn't really allow him to steal. It's decent damage, though, for the mid-boss. Wraith's ultimate is a very strong tool in mid-boss, especially when you've maxed it out, because it becomes AoE, meaning that you can go in there, stun everyone, and then steal it. This is very strong once you've maxed it out. Before it's maxed out, it's not that much of a threat because it's only for one person. So when I'm doing mid-boss, I'm usually looking at the Wraith, and if you hover over their character, you can see how many points they've spent. This looks like this. If I hover over my character, I can see I haven't spent any points, for example. So if I would look at her ultimate and be like, okay, she doesn't have AoE ultimate yet, or she does have it. Finally, Yamato ultimate is very good at securing the mid-boss, so it's better defensively than offensively. Offensively, it doesn't stop people from capturing it, but what it does do defensively is it allows you to become unstunnable, meaning that you become unstoppable. You cannot be stunned, you cannot be, moved by Viscous Punch or whatever, so you can just stand there and get the Rejuvenator. I want to briefly touch on the meta around Rejuvenator. So let me just kill this mid-boss real quick so we can get the Rejuvenator to drop. So usually in the Rejuvenator, there's going to be about 3 different roles that need to be occupied by a team. First of all, there should always be someone on top of the Rejuvenator parrying. This is very important because if anyone tries to steal, if you're parrying on top of it, if you're just on top, your parry is 360 degrees, meaning anyone tries to steal it from any angle, you'll parry them and they won't be able to get it. So this is the first role, and this is the person who parries. Usually in my game, someone will say, hey, I'll parry. The second role is the person who heavy melees it to secure it. This is pretty straightforward. The goal is just to heavy melee it as soon as it comes down. The third role are the people who go around the mid-boss area looking for people to come steal. So the best way to prevent a steal is to be proactive and try to prevent people from reaching the area in the first place. So you don't want 6 people sitting around the Rejuvenator buff waiting for someone to come. You want maybe 2 to 3 people sitting next to the Rejuvenator while the rest of your team hunts and make sure no one can get into the mid-boss area in the first place. Now that we've gotten this out of the way, I'd like to show you guys some practical examples from my games, and maybe it'll help you understand a little bit better when to do mid-boss versus when not to. Of course, this is not meant to be an exhaustive guide. There are so many different possible situations in Deadlock, and no one can tell you 100%, hey, you should do mid-boss under XYZ criteria. It's all dependent on the game state, but I hope that the type of thinking that I'll teach you in these videos will help you figure out when to do mid-boss in your own games. I'd like to just finish it off before the examples by saying that you should always try mid-boss even if you're not sure, and at least you'll learn from it. I've called so many bad mid-boss calls in my time. I've called many terrible ones, and I've learned a lot from them. So I'd recommend that you just try it, see if it works, and if it doesn't, try to understand why it didn't, and that's how you'll get better at it. Let's get into the examples. Let's start by the easiest example, a team wipe. In this scenario, we've wiped the entire team, which makes it very easy to do mid-boss. If you wipe them, you should always do mid-boss, even if it's early. Of course, there are exceptions to this. Sometimes you might not be healthy enough and you might be too far from mid-boss. Let's say that you wipe them at 12 minutes and you're on one side of the map and mid-boss is away and their respawn timers are pretty short. You might not be able to do it. But if you're close to mid-boss and if their respawn timers are long enough, you should always do it if they're wipe. Now, of course, I know a lot of you watching this have maybe 100 games, maybe 200 games played, and a lot of your teammates will not listen to you. There's nothing you can do about that. Just try to communicate, hey guys, I think we should do mid-boss. And if they listen, great. If they don't listen, what can you do? Just move on. So in this example, pretty cut and dry. Since they all died, there's no threat at all. And that's basically going to be it, right? We're going to get the Rejuvenator for free, and it's going to be a huge advantage for us, and it's going to allow us to extend our lead. Here, I want to talk about the type of situation that you should be careful of. In this scenario, we have a couple picks. Right now, it's 5 of us versus 2 of them. But as you'll see, the situation will evolve and this mid-boss will become very bad for us. And I'll talk a little bit about why. I'll let the clip play out. So at first, as you can see on the minimap, my Yamato just died. And my Vindicta has to go back to base because she's very low on health, as you can see at the top. So it's actually only 3 of us at the mid-boss, and they have 2 up. And they have Viscous. Viscous is very strong at dealing with mid-boss, has a lot of abilities that are really annoying. Lash is also pretty good, but doesn't have ult. So here, we kill the mid-boss, and they're coming to contest it. So I want to talk a little bit about the mistake that we've made. I'm just going to let the clip play out. As you can see, Viscous punches all of us away, and then goes for the Rejuvenator. So the main mistake that we made was a positioning mistake. We all stood on top of the Rejuvenator, knowing that Viscous could punch us away. If you're playing against Viscous or anyone that can punch you away, the play is to go on the high ground and only drop down at the very last second when you can punch the Rejuvenator and not before. If you drop down before, you're simply going to get punched away and then Viscous will steal it for themselves. This is a great example of what to do as Viscous and what not to do against Viscous. Positioning wise, we just misplayed that heavily. So I just wanted to give a little clip of what that looks like. So this is from the same game, and here I'm very afraid of getting the Rejuve stolen by the Viscous. So there's a couple things we do differently. First of all, we have Yamato ulting on top of the Rejuvenator. So if you ever play Yamato, know that you can ult to basically get a more guaranteed Rejuvenator. When you're ulted, you're unstoppable. So if you get parried, you don't get knocked down. And also you can't get knocked off of it by abilities. And the other thing is, as Haze, I'm positioning on the high ground, and I'm only going to drop at the very last second. I'll let the clip play out. Very last second comes, I drop, charge the punch, and get it. This is the type of stuff that you should do against people that can knock you off of it. So mainly Viscous, but can also be good against McGinnis in some situations. The wall is pretty annoying, so you do have to be wary that you might get walled off. So as you can see right here, we've killed the Haze and the Wraith, and they're both going to be dead for about 40 seconds or so. The Haze is going to respawn a little bit earlier, but this gives us the opportunity to try to go and do something. With this something, as you can see, their respawn cooldowns are going down pretty quickly. There's no objectives nearby, and we're all pretty close to mid-boss, and it's 26 minutes into the game, so we can do mid-boss fairly quickly. So we go ahead and do it. One thing to note is that punch damage does a ton more to mid-boss than other types of damage. I believe the multiplier is like 4x or something, or maybe it's 2x. I'm not sure what the multiplier exactly is, but punching the mid-boss feels like insane DPS, even if you're a gun character, so I'd highly recommend. Okay, so one thing that's important here is, as you can see, as soon as we get the mid-boss, I go aggressive. So I go on this Yamato and I decide, hey, I need to shove her out of there, right? And I need to put the pressure on. This is extremely important because if you don't pressure them, it makes stealing mid-boss much easier. So don't just stand there waiting for the Rejuvenator to drop. While the Rejuve is dropping, be active and try to stop them. For example, our Shiv died up here, but if we rewind and we look at how he played it, even though he died, I do believe that what he did was correct. So if you can see here, just going to rewind a little bit. If you can see, our Shiv is zoning up top. So ideally, it's important to have one person who tries to zone up top to make it harder for them to steal it. So he's zoning up top and he's making it so it's harder for people to just drop down from the top and steal it, which is the correct play in this instance. Maybe he didn't need to die for that, but honestly, you get the mid-boss. I don't mind that play at all. So from this example, the two key points to remember are, if you get 1 or 2 kills, sometimes that can be enough to do mid-boss, especially with their team comp. So if I look at their composition here, there's a few characters we have to be afraid for mid-boss. Yamato can steal it with her ultimate. Haze can use her ultimate and kill everyone in the pit. Paradox can swap, but she's not like a huge threat with mid-boss. Wraith is a threat if she has her ultimate max, which she does. She has 39k. So she's a threat with that. And Grey Talon is not that much of a threat. The bird is a little bit annoying, but it's not that big a deal. So with that said, Wraith was dead and Haze's ultimate was on cooldown, as well as Yamato's ultimate. This means that all the threats to stop us from doing mid-boss were gone, meaning we could proceed safely even though we only had 1 kill. So it's not always about getting a lot of kills, it's about getting the right kills and making sure that they don't have the abilities they need to stop you. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this type of content. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and let me know what other video suggestions you would like to see in the comments. I appreciate the support, and I hope you guys have a good day.